Good morning. We are here on July the 8th of 2020. Lots of reading this morning. Lots of reading. I've already had lots of interaction about the reading this morning. Had several text messages, so looking forward to this morning's study. Looking forward to seeing what the girls at the table say today, too. Good morning, Judy. How are you this morning? Good to see you. Okay, so I'm going to start off in the Proverbs. Put on my little thing here. I'm going to start off in the Proverbs today. Proverbs 18, 20, and 21. Proverbs 18:21 is one of my all-time favorite scriptures in the Bible. I'm still learning it, but I'm going to just start with 18:20. Wise words satisfy like a good meal. The right words bring satisfaction. I'm going to repeat that. Wise words satisfy like a good meal. The right words bring satisfaction. I probably could camp out right here on this for the rest of the morning. If we're not feeling satisfied with our life, if our life isn't bringing a sense of satisfaction, we probably ought to be checking our words. Okay, but that's not where I wanted to go with that. So I wanted to start with it because it's about the words. And then I want to go, instead of in the Chronicles, I want to go to the Acts. And I kind of jumped ahead a little bit yesterday, got a little bit excited because I knew what was coming. Acts chapter 26, verse 2 was coming. So I kind of, let the cat out of the bag for that yesterday, talking about how Paul was in prison. We'd been reading about Paul being in prison. And once again, Paul's not guilty of anything. Good morning. Hi there. No problem. Paul's in prison, and he's not guilty of anything except loving Jesus. Paul was raised as a Jew. Paul was trained as a Jew. Paul enforced the laws to the extent that he was killing Christians. So Paul knew what he was doing. Paul knew how to not, what was the word they used? What did they accuse him of? The temple, desecrating the temple. Paul knew how to not desecrate the temple. Paul never would have desecrated the temple. Paul never would have mistreated the Jews. He is a Jew. So the trumped up charges against him really had nothing to do with why he was in prison. But the reading, building up to this, building up to showing Paul's been in prison for more than 2 years, backs all of that up. They want to send him to Caesar because they want to ambush him and kill him. The whole purpose of everything happening is they just want Paul dead. So they put him in a dungeon that, as we mentioned, I've done some study on it. And back in those days where he was at in Rome, the dungeons was underneath the city and they were carved into stone. And so it was a stone dungeon, stone floor, stone walls. They had a very, very little opening that only when they brought him his food did he ever see sunlight. He was completely out of sunlight. And again, during the rainy season, it is said that Paul's cell at this particular time would be up to his knees in sewage because they didn't have the modern day sewage systems we have today. We can't even begin to grasp the conditions under which Paul was imprisoned for 2 years. Again, one story that I read said that they had to pull him up and bathe him for 3 days to just get the stench off of him before they'd ever let him come before King Agrippa. So I've emphasized for years what the King James Version of the Bible, Acts 26, verse 2 says. Paul's being given this opportunity to speak to King Agrippa. King Agrippa comes in And they bring him up, and they clean him up, and they bring him before him. And the very first words that Paul speaks to him has absolutely changed my life forever. In Acts chapter 26, verse 2, if you read the King James Version, it says, I think myself happy, King Agrippa. I think myself happy. And I'm telling you, it just shames me for the times that I get into my pity parties and I feel sorry for myself, the conditions I live in. I live heaven on earth. I haven't had to suffer the way Paul has had to suffer. I haven't. The times he was beaten, the times he was shipwrecked. I mean, he was floating in the ocean, hanging on to something from the shipwreck for 3 days. You know, and we think we got it bad because there's a virus that's running around. And don't get me wrong, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. That virus is evil. And that virus is seeking to kill and to destroy. But it creates an environment of fear and an environment of entitlement and an environment of anything except God. And so I want to emphasize today about the reading in Acts 26. And I want you to focus on the words, because I'm going to go back to the Proverbs that I started with today. In today's reading, Proverbs 18:20 says, wise words satisfy like a good meal. The right words bring satisfaction. Paul's given this opportunity to speak before a king who Paul knows from his years and years of training as a Jew. He knows and understands that King Agrippa is very well versed in the Jewish ways. Not only that, but there is a belief that King Agrippa himself was a Jew. So I want us to look and see what Paul actually speaks about. So they've told him that he's desecrated the temple and that he's mistreated the Jews, therefore he deserves prison and he deserves death. And he's not guilty of any of those things. And he's being given an opportunity. Now, remember in yesterday's reading and the day before, Paul stood up for himself and said, no, this isn't what needs to happen. I want to speak to Caesar. I want my day in court. And so this is part of the results of that. Now, once again, I'm going to remind us of what the proverb says. Wise words satisfy like a good meal. The right words bring satisfaction. The Bible tells us we're to be content in all things. Paul tells us in his writings that he learned to be content in all things. And yet we can't be content here in America with running water and modern day sewage and luxuries like electricity and air conditioning and free food. I mean, right here in my little town, if I got to the point where I'm hungry, my family's hungry, I personally know of 3 different places that hand out food on a regular basis that I could go to on any given day. Right here in Skytook, I can get food. I can get free clothes right here in America. And yet we have such a hard time of living a contented life, let alone a satisfied life. And then we get to see Paul. So one would think, right, that Paul would come before King Agrippa and say, King Agrippa, you know the Jewish ways. You understand, and you know my background. Because there's evidence that King Agrippa knew of Paul. Because Paul was a famous tyrant against the Christians. You know, you would think he would say, you know I would never desecrate our temple. You know I would never mistreat our people, my people. You would think that he would say, I'm innocent. Or, I mean, let's think about what maybe Elizabeth might say if given this chance. King Agrippa, do you not understand there's sewer in my dungeon? Where's my television? I mean, I deserve to have a 12-inch mattress in my cell. It's my right to get 3 more meals a day. Do you not understand they're mistreating me, King Agrippa? I'm in prison and they're... At a very minimum, you would think that Paul would state his case to obtain his freedom. Did you read today? Did you hear what Paul said? Paul made the case for King Agrippa to be saved. That's what Paul did. Do you think that at the end of this day, when King Agrippa responded back to him, verse 28 of today's reading, Acts 26, verse 28, Agrippa interrupted him. Do you think you can persuade me to become a Christian so quickly, Paul? Does anybody else find this whole conversation fascinating besides me? 2 years in prison for something he's not guilty of, in conditions that's beyond our imagination deplorable. And he's pleading for King Agrippa's salvation. And this is his response. What was it we started with? Wise words satisfy like a good meal. The right words bring satisfaction. Paul replied in verse 29, whether quickly or not, I pray to God that both you and everyone here in this audience might become the same as I am, except for these chains. I can get emotional just thinking about it. When I compare myself to Paul. The only thing that was on his mind is saving the very people that was keeping him in prison. There was no revenge in him. There was no getting back at him. There was no justifying his innocence. There was only Christ, crucified and risen again, the hope of all mankind, the only hope that King Agrippa and Festus and all of the people in the audience had. Paul knew that. It was their only hope, and it was the only thing he wanted to talk about. All we want to talk about is how rough our life is. All we want to talk about is how unfair this virus is, or how ugly my kids have been to me, or how my best friend betrayed me, or all we want to talk about is our problems. And we don't have a satisfied life. And we wonder why. You think if Paul could be so satisfied with his life, living in prison, that just maybe if we sought God on 1/10 of the level that Paul was seeking God, that perhaps a little bit of satisfaction into our current circumstances, regardless of where we find ourselves, might actually change us to where all of a sudden it's not so bad. See, Paul didn't focus on the war raging around him, the waters rushing through his toes with feces in it. That's not what Paul focused on. Paul didn't focus on the stench of the smell of that prison cell. While Paul was in that prison, chained to the wall, sleeping upright, because there was no way he could lay down, he focused on God. So then let's go to Chronicles now. Because I already know. Y'all are so much better than me. I already know it. You guys are so much deeper than I am, that when you got to Chronicles chapter 5 and 6, you said, I can't wait to read this. I know. That's what y'all said. Yay! There's something in this for me today, Lord. Well, you know what? There was something in this today for me. I've already posted it on my Facebook page. If you looked at my page, you already know what I got out of it. So here they are, 44,760 capable warriors in the armies. And they were all skilled in combat and armed with shields, swords, and bows. And they waged war against the others. And they cried out to God. Are you ready for what was in it for me today? So there's many of us feel like that we're waging a war, that we're battling this virus, that we're battling the economy that's threatening jobs, that's threatening the lives of our loved ones, that are tearing down our nursing homes when our beloved elders are at, that won't let us gather together in worship, and is just, turning life upside down from what we once knew it. There's many of us feeling that way. But what did they do? 44,760 capable warriors ready to go to battle. Verse 20 says it. They cried out to God during the battle, and he answered their prayer because they trusted in him. July the 8th of 2020. There are so many people that's so uncertain about what their future is. You don't know what tomorrow holds. You don't know if you're going to have a job. You don't know if you're not going to have a job. You don't know if you go to the grocery store, that virus is going to come knocking at your door. And then the next thing you know, those thoughts are holding dominion over your life. Those thoughts are holding you captive, and you can't think about anything else because we're not trusting in God. And because we're using our words wrong. We are so adept at speaking our problems out. Oh my goodness, you want to ask me about having a bad day? Most of yesterday, I didn't feel good physically. I didn't. I'm battling some things physically, nothing that's serious. Let me tell you what's happening. I've got a spiritual warfare going on because I have made a stand, and I've mentioned it to you guys on this video, that I'm not going to let this physical body dominate me. My spirit man is much stronger than this physical man, and I've battled weight that was going to lead to some health issues, and I've taken dominion back over this body and said, no, my spirit man's going to lead me. And as a result of that, a battle wages, and I have days that yesterday I struggled. I didn't feel good most of yesterday. I am, for once, instead of coming before y'all telling you how I had to repent and had to tell people I was sorry, and I'm for once able to tell y'all, you know what? I'm pretty satisfied with my life yesterday. I didn't spend my day talking about the headache I had. I didn't tell anybody I went over and grabbed 2 aspirins once. Lack of faith? Possibly. Gift from God? Absolutely, those aspirins are a gift from God. I wish I could tell you I do that every day. I wish I could. But you know what? I'm better than I used to be. There was a time when I could have woke up yesterday telling Tom, look out, because I don't feel good. Whoever I came into contact, look out, because Sue Lynn, I just got this feeling about me, and I think those little pellets they're using is not working right, and I mean, the sad part is I can communicate that with you right now today so much better than I can communicate with you what I did yesterday to overcome. That's sad. We are so good at talking about our problems and describing to the nth degree how we've been mistreated, how that's not fair, how life's not, how good we are at talking about our mistakes? How good are we about talking about how God's blessed us? How good are we about talking about a prophecy of what God's promises mean for us? Right now, today, I don't care what your circumstances are. I don't care how much you've sinned. I don't care what you've done. I don't care how many people you've hurt. God's promises are true for you. And he promises us that he'll be with us through this virus. He promises us that if we are in prison unjustly, that he'll get us through the muck and the mud of the sewer that squishes between our toes as we're trying to sleep at night. That we literally can come out of that and they can wash us off. And we'll be more interested in the people around us getting saved than we are about our freedom. He's no respecter of persons. Anything God did and provided for Paul, he's already done for us. It's just that, what do we do? What do we do? Why do we not live that life? Why is that not what's coming through? Why can I not overcome a day when Tom's being hateful to me? Which, by the way, doesn't happen. But I use it as an example because it's us. Why do I have a struggle on a day that he's not in a good mood? Why? Well, have I read Proverbs 18:20 yet today? Let me read it to you again, and then I'll finish up with 18:21, one of my all-time favorite scriptures. Oh, I'm going to back up on you. I'm going to go back and reread what I got out of Chronicles today. You remember? I told y'all what I got out of Chronicles. I got a powerful word for today, July the 8th of 2020, out of Chronicles. It's Chronicles 5, verse 20, and then I'll go to the Proverbs. They cried out to God during the battle, and he answered their prayers because they trusted in him. Today, I choose to trust in God regardless of the way I feel. I choose to trust in God regardless of what my circumstances look like. I trust him. Proverbs 18:20 and 21. Wise words satisfy like a good meal. The right words bring satisfaction. See, whatever I'm struggling with, I don't feel good, then I'm going to profess that I'm happy, healthy, and whole. I'm happy, healthy, and whole. I said that yesterday. Out loud yesterday, I said, I'm happy, I'm healthy, and I'm whole. In the physical, I didn't feel good. I was battling something in my body. But I woke up today and I lost another pound. But I spoke the right things yesterday. And when I ended my day, I was satisfied like a good meal. I felt like I overcame yesterday. Wise words satisfy like a good meal. The right words bring satisfaction. And then the New Living Translation for this verse, verse 21 is, the tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. Lord knows I love to talk. He gave me that gift. And the Lord knows that most of my adult life I've not used those words to bring life. But praise God, I'm not where I used to be. I'm not where I need to be, but I'm not where I used to be. And I pray that on this day, today, in the midst of this wicked, whatever this thing is they want to give a name to that I don't want to speak its name, virus thing out there. In the midst of what they all want to say is an economic disaster. What they say is social unrest like we've never seen before. I call it all not. This is what I declare. My God sent his son and he died on the cross for me. For Elizabeth, he died for me, to give me a life to the full and overflowing. That means I get to live heaven on earth. I have more than enough. I live in the land of plenty because the economy is not my source. That virus can't come near my doorstep because I am a child of God. I am healed from the inside out. He lives on the inside of me. Therefore, that virus can't touch him, so it can't touch me or my loved ones. And I speak protection over, and I speak directly to that virus to be gone. And I speak to this whole country to be filled full of love. And I speak to the believers that are hearing my voice to rise up. And every time you hear of social unrest, speak the word love out loud. Out loud, love. Every time the news comes on and it's about protest, or it's about rioters, or it's about terrorism, or it's about, speak love out loud. Call up love. We have that power and that authority if we just take it. Now, that's what July the 8th of 2020 did for Elizabeth when I read today. God bless y'all.